Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another Star Wars Rebels video roundtable. We're talking about Season 3, Episode 16. Well, I'm calling it Episode 16. I think technically it's 18, but we'll call it 16 because that's the way that I like it. It's titled Through Imperial Eyes. This episode originally premiered on February 25th of 2017, and it was written by Nicole Dubek and directed by Saul Ruiz. We are recording live from Studios B3, and I am Spencer Brinkerhoff. Now, it wouldn't quite be a roundtable discussion if I didn't have some other people here talking with me. And so I'd like to take a moment and introduce our guests because we're super excited to have them today. Our first guest is Austin Thompson. Now, Austin is a Chinese language teacher up in Salt Lake City and a proud Hufflepuff. Austin, let me see. Hengao Jiao, hold on. Hengao Xingjing Dao Ni? Did I say
close?
How'd I do
Close.
it? Correct me. How'd I do?
You got a Japanese accent.
That's true.
It's pretty close. It's 很高兴认识你.
Dang it! I was so off. Now tell us, Austin, how did you find your way into the Star Wars fandom?
Oh wow! I mean, I first saw Star Wars when I was about 6 years old. My brother brought home VHS tapes he borrowed from a friend, and we watched it as a whole family. My parents had seen it, and just been a fan ever since that moment. And the prequels came out when Phantom Menace came out when I was 11, so still really into it then, and just exploded, and been a fan ever since. Especially when the Clone Wars came out.
Yeah,
and Rebels has been awesome.
Awesome. Oh, yeah. I mean, the Clone Wars has so many episodes. The Clone Wars TV show, it's more hours than any of the all of the movies combined. So I'm super excited about that. Well, let's introduce our next guest. Oh my goodness, Irina, I forgot to ask you the proper pronunciation of your last name.
In my country, it's Irina. So it's really close.
Irina?
It's okay.
Irina. Okay, and you're joining us from Budapest, Romania. Is that right?
Bucharest.
Bucharest. Oh my goodness. Hold on just a second.
It's
Bucharest. And you're studying Japanese, and so for you, I can say yoroshiku onegai shimasu.
Hi.
Hi. Domo arigatou gozaimasu. Nihongo wa daijoubu. Awesome. Now tell us a little bit. Oh, and I forgot to say also that, Irina, you have your own show called the Malachor Transmissions podcast, right?
Yeah. I've established it I think a couple of months ago. And it's a solo project for now because it's really hard to connect with people. I mean, you've seen how hard it is for us to be on the same page. So
right.
So far, I'm moving alone.
Well,
I'm hoping I can change that in the future, but until then, that's how it is.
Excellent. Well, let's jump right into this episode. Ready? So in this episode, what's happening is Ezra has stolen one of the shuttles. It looks like one of those shuttles from Star Tours. Okay, it's not really from Star Tours, but it looks close enough. And he gets himself captured so that he can go in and rescue Agent Kallus, a.k.a. the new Fulcrum. But all goes south when General Thrawn shows up. Now, this episode is titled Through Imperial Eyes, and it literally starts through Kallus's eyes. So I want to start with you, Austin. What did you think about sort of kicking off the episode in this way? Was it jarring? Was it cool? I mean, what were your thoughts about the first-person point of view?
Yeah, it was a little jarring. When I first realized what was going on, and I was like, oh, we're looking through somebody's first person perspective, and it's Kallus. I thought, are they going to do the entire episode this way? And I was a little worried because it was it'd be hard to watch the whole thing like that because it'd be so different. And then the next scene, it wasn't, and I was kind of disappointed that we were going to see it like that.
And Irina, what did you think about that? Do you play some video games? Are you accustomed to a first person point of view?
I'm actually doing at the moment. I'm playing Overwatch, and it's a first-person shooter, which I haven't had the occasion of playing too much through my childhood. That's the whole disadvantage, you know. I like to call myself a gamer, but I didn't have the possibilities of every gamer out there. So now I'm like, well, do I have the right to do this? But yeah, so getting back to the Kallus first-person perspective, I thought it was very interesting. Certainly the first time we've seen that in a Star Wars thing. And I honestly thought he was gonna die by the end
Oh
because
yeah,
it was so special the way they used it, and it was so beautiful that I
right.
thought it had to be a special occasion. So maybe what if something happens? And since Thrawn kind of discovers him, it's pretty close to him dying anyway.
It is. Well, and that's the thing is that, Thrawn is so merciless. There's this now that he knows that Kallus is the mole that they've been looking for, you know, we don't know what exactly is going to happen next, right? So before we get to Kallus and his potential fate, let's talk a little bit more about as we step through this episode. So here we have AP5 and in disguise. No, AP5 wasn't in disguise, but Chop, he's in disguise, right? His traditional disguise, and Ezra is there as a bounty hunter. Now, I was wondering, did he get that bounty hunter costume from Hondo? Did that look like something that Hondo had like supplied? Austin, did you have any thoughts about that at all? Or
I didn't think about Hondo, but I thought it was interesting that uh, Sabine had painted it up for him.
right,
Because obviously Sabine had been a bounty hunter and knew about that sort of world, and so she probably made it quite convincing to fool anybody but Thrawn. And but I thought it was interesting that if this episode takes place after uh, Sabine's experience with her family, and
right.
and she's no longer part of the Ghost crew, I just made me wonder how I bet they've used this bounty hunter costume before. Maybe they've used it on another mission and they're reusing it for this. Maybe it's not the first time Ezra's used it.
Right, right. And now, Irina, did you feel like that did you have any like suspicion at all that Ezra was there for anything else other than to save Kallus, or what were your thoughts when he first showed up? Was it just, oh, he's got himself captured, or did you know that this was? Did you kind of suspect that this was all part of a plan?
I suspected it was kind of part of the plan because why else would they send him there? But at the same time, I found it very hilarious, I think, because the Empire is very cold with um, each of its subjects, including Kallus, and we see his kind of distancing from it. But at the same time, the rebellion, who doesn't even trust Kallus, is so willing to just, send
Right.
someone in there to save him. And I was like, wow, that is brilliant.
Well, and I
They don't care.
And I love that you brought up the fact that the rebellion still doesn't completely trust Kallus. Do you think that maybe they really are suspicious, or in general, or do you think it's just Ezra and the Ghost crew? Do you think everyone in the rebellion is suspicious?
I think probably yes. I think in this case, the Ghost crew and Ezra are like the the voice of the rebellion. In this case, they're like
Hmm.
the body of the rebellion in through their eyes. And I think it's probably safe to assume that the higher ups would mistrust Kallus just as much, if not worse.
Right. Now, in addition to Kallus in this episode, we also got to see, let me look at his name again, Lieutenant List. Now, I didn't remember that List had been in the show until he mentioned, the last time he was called up by, some of the higher ups. Do you remember what happened then, Austin? I think he said it was that princess, somebody or other.
Yeah, he was referencing the episode with Princess Leia, and that he was a kind of a main character in that because he was kind of the Imperial in charge of showing her around Lothal and being her helper there. But Lieutenant List has actually been around since the first episode. He's always just kind of been in the background, as one of the lower Imperials. If you go back and watch the very first when Ezra's stealing the supplies in Lothal, he's one of the Imperials that's there.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, so he's been
That's
around for a
awesome.
long time. I don't think he's going to be around anymore though.
No, I think he's in trouble now. Definitely in trouble. I think he's on the outs. Now, I saw someone comment online. Speaking of List and speaking of him being on the outs, I saw someone comment online that they had never paid much attention to the Imperial code cylinders until this episode. So, Irina, have you noticed the code cylinders previous to this episode? Was it anything that you had thought about before, and you're like, what are those things, or is just this was the first time?
I did notice them, and I think everyone did because they were thinking they were pens.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who were asking Pablo Hidalgo on Twitter, like, what is up with those pens? I think he'll finally be relieved of answering this question. And I really thought it was an interesting concept because, we have IDs and like cards
Right.
that we use to identify ourselves with, but they have those cylinders. And I wondered what kind of information do they retain? Like, what do they put in there that could identify the person
Right.
and
Well,
say, like, this is the guy?
Well, and it was one of those things that I had kind of thought about it, that it was almost like dog tags, but it was with a special sort of a chip in it. So you end up like having more access to different areas because you have a higher rank. So I thought it was super fun to see them in action. I don't think we've ever seen them in action before. So that was fun. I also, I really enjoy putting together sort of like movie events. I've got a website that I do called Cinema Events, and I'll put together an event for new movies. And what'll happen is I'll try and put together T-shirts and some little prizes and stuff like that. And I was about this close to putting together a whole like kit where you can make your own Imperial code cylinders for Rogue One event, but I was like, no, it'll be too much work, and so now I really wish I would have, because they're super important now, right? so then what?
Wait,
Go ahead,
I
Irina.
kind of, the scanners where you kind of put your finger and they get your fingerprint, or like they scan your eyes.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe those cylinders could, contain some of that kind of information. But I don't know. It's just a thought.
Well, I mean, they definitely were personalized to each one of the people that possessed them, and in that way, Kallus was able to actually like frame List for being, the one who was well, he wasn't actually the Fulcrum, but he was framed for it. So here we are in our next section here, where what's happened is Ezra has been captured. Ezra has been moved, and List and Kallus are going to Grand Admiral Thrawn's ship, the Chimera. And as they're walking in, we get to see our first sort of like glimpse of Thrawn in action. Austin, what were your first impressions here of Thrawn in action?
Wow, well, even before we saw Thrawn, I loved the look of the Chimera Star Destroyer with the design on the underbelly.
Oh,
You
right,
see
right.
Thrawn's love of art and culture and mythology, even on his Star Destroyer. So he's really committed to this sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And you also see on when they first land on his Star Destroyer, you see he's got special stormtroopers that have a special insignia
I noticed that
on their shoulder. Yeah. So you see all these things that are, you can see this is a different place than the usual Imperial Star Destroyer. And then we go in and we see he's got a different shirt on, he's got gloves on, he's really going at it with these droids, and you could see, okay, this guy is not only extremely dangerous with his mind, but he's extremely dangerous with his body.
Right.
And I think with his intelligence, he knows, I can't just be a thinker, I've also got to be in peak physical condition and ready for anything at any time.
Now, something else, I love that you pointed out that the other thing about the Chimera is that all of his troopers had like their logo insignia. It was like Thrawn's sort of like special forces. Now, do you think, Irina, do you think that, Thrawn took the same sort of like care in everything else that he does in picking out the troopers that actually served on his ship? Are those troopers going to be a better shot than your standard trooper because they serve with Thrawn?
I don't know, but I would like to point out, I don't know if any of you noticed, but the design that you're talking about is actually Admiral Trench's head. And I thought that was interesting, or at least
Whoa.
something from species. Yeah. I looked at it very carefully, and you see it on the assassin droids as well, and kind of all
Oh
the
my gosh.
Maybe
yeah.
he's a fan of Admiral Trench.
That could so for those of people who may not remember, Trench was from the Clone Wars, and it was sort of like the submarine episode where Anakin like was using the ship with a very small cloaking device, and Trench was like this gigantic spider character. So, Irina, you're saying that that logo, the circular logo that all of them are wearing, is a design that looks like Trench, or are you saying that it was the same one that Trench used?
I think maybe both. I don't know. It was a head, like it had three eyes,
Right.
it had the very specific jaw that Trench had. I assume it could be him because we've never seen anyone from his species ever again. We only saw him.
Right.
So my best bet is that it's anyway something that points to him specifically.
See, and something else that I really love about this is that Admiral Thrawn, as an alien in the Empire, is an outsider. Because, I mean, you look at these guys, they're all British white men, and so he's an outsider. And then we have, as you've pointed out, another alien species that was a leader. And so maybe Thrawn is paying a tribute to him in that way. That's awesome.
That could be. I also thought about this because the Empire seems very xenophobic. I don't know how to pronounce that correctly.
That's right. That's correct.
Okay. Because as you say, Thrawn is like the only non-human person in the Empire. And not only that, but we've seen examples like with the Lasat, with the whole of Seb's species completely eradicated, with the Geonosians the same. So like I feel like the Empire has a thing for aliens where it just doesn't accept them in a way.
Right.
I don't know.
No, I think that's perfect. And it sort of like speaking to that and in a broader sense, you have another thought? What was that?
The scene where Thrawn was training and Kallus and List were looking at him, and when he notices, he immediately closes the door.
Right.
I thought it was something about it that I felt like Thrawn is so used to having people look at him in a like demeaning way, perhaps, because of this xenophobia, perhaps. So like when he noticed that people are looking at him, he was like, what is this?
Right, and he closes the door. Now, I want to talk about this a little bit more. It has been years and years since I've actually read the Thrawn trilogy that was written by Tim Zahn. Are you guys familiar with those? Do you remember the Thrawn trilogy very well? Austin, you're kind of maybe?
I have a passing familiarity with them. I don't know them very well. Is his code word to shut off his droids a reference to that as well? He says Rook or something like that.
Right. So I looked it up a little bit, and I think that you're right. Do you remember what that was, or you want to talk about that, Austin?
No, I don't remember.
Irina, do you remember it?
No, I haven't read the trilogy.
Okay.
Really hard to get. Like I never got my hands on any Legends content. That's why I was very glad when it was erased. I was like, yes, I can find the new content. I'm alive. I'm well. This is perfect.
Oh, awesome. So when I first heard it, I thought he was saying override Rook. like he was playing a chess game and he was moving the rook piece. But that doesn't make any sense in the Star Wars universe because they don't have chess. They've got the Derjak table, right? So I looked it up and I saw that somebody had actually spelled it RKH. Okay, so here's what I found. I'm going to read a little section here to you guys. So it says, Rook was created by author Timothy Zahn for his Thrawn trilogy series of novels, and first appeared in Heir to the Empire, and then in Dark Force Rising, and finally in The Last Command. Now, Rook was not appeared in any novels since, but here's the thing. He became revered as a legend among his people, the Nogri, for his role in the assassination of Grand Admiral Thrawn. To kill a widely despised foe was considered a great honor among the Nogri, and Thrawn was considered an enemy of the entire Nogri people. So here we are. We're bringing the legends back in. Last week, I totally forgot to mention it, but they talked about the hand of the Emperor's hand. I forgot to mention that last week. But here we have him saying, override Rook. And he may be referencing the person that killed him in the Legends books. So here we have him battling those assassin droids, and his shut-off word, his safe word, is the guy that killed him. How awesome is that, right?
That is pretty awesome. I mean, even without knowing that or remembering that from the novels, you get a sense. And he says this word that it's not a word in Basic or in English, that it's this alien word, and that knowing Thrawn's character, it's something from history or from a story or something like that.
Right. The other thing that I thought was really fun, sort of in this same scene, is as they're walking down that hallway, they pass by the sector command staff, and List kind of goes, "Oh, did you see those guys? That's a sector command staff." And then I paused it so I could look at them. Did you guys see any of those people that were in there? Irina, did anybody catch your eye in there?
I don't know her name, but it's the black girl that was in the Geonosis episode.
Yes.
A few weeks ago, I think. Yeah.
The captain.
Yeah, I think her name was Brunson, right? But in that episode, as the ghost sort of like blasted right up through the middle of her like light cruiser, I think it was. Well, we now have confirmation that she survived that attack on Geonosis, because there she is being, like attacked or like interviewed by Thrawn. The other one there was Commander Brom Titus. I had a note here, so I'm not remembering all of these off the top of my head. I had a note, but then the other one, he was also. I think that he was the one that was on that planet that was all like the gas and fuel stuff that blew up. So another confirmation that he has survived. So it's good to see some of these guys sort of like coming back and like they're still in the mix. But at the same time, there's a little bit of a sort of like vibe to these guys that they're not really the best characters either, but they've all had some sort of like interchange or fight or experience in dealing with the rebels. And so as such, they are valuable to Thrawn, sort of like his research and his study. So from there, we get into Thrawn's office. Now, so many Easter eggs. Did you guys watch the Rebel Recon and sort of like go over that to sort of figure out what all of the Easter eggs were in there? Austin, what Easter egg really stood out to you in Thrawn's office?
Oh, well, right away was Gree's helmet.
Gree's helmet.
First time seeing the clone trooper helmet that was Commander Gree's.
Right.
And my first thought was like, oh wow, he's got his helmet, and then my second thought was, maybe that's his head.
See, and I thought about that too, because I was like, because of Thrawn is such sort of he's a studier. He really wants to research everything out. He wants to learn what's going on. So he went back to Kashyyyk, and there he finds, the leftovers of the battle, and he picks up, the helmet. And just like Jango Fett's head didn't come out of the helmet on Geonosis, right? But I mean, he picks up this helmet and he kept that because somewhere it had a significance to what happened there on Kashyyyk. Could Thrawn be researching the Jedi and the last of the Jedi and wondering if maybe some of them have survived because he saw what happened to Gree? Wonderful to see that one.
Maybe he was at Kashyyyk shortly after that happened. I mean, we're not exactly sure when Thrawn's service with the Empire started. I mean, perhaps he picked it up right after, and it was part of the the subjugation of the Wookiees or whatever.
Right. Well, and also I think that there's one of those Legends books. So Irina, you don't have to know this part. One of those Legends books that says that on the first battle of Geonosis, General Grievous was actually in the catacombs underneath, the battle as that was going on. So, maybe it's there. So, Irina, I want to ask you as well. Did you see some other sort of Easter eggs or something that was there in Thrawn's office that he was using to research the rebels that caught your eye?
Not really. I did catch the Ralph McQuarrie art.
Oh, right.
I think that's kind of it.
Yeah. And that was a big piece too. I think that they pointed out that in the Rebels Recon that this is the first time that Ralph McQuarrie's artwork has not just been used as an inspiration, but it actually appeared as he originally created it in one of the episodes. So I love those little throwbacks. We also saw a scene where what happens is they go to shut off the security cameras in the detention center, and up at the top they have the banks of all of those looks like TV screens. I was like, oh man, that's what Luke and Han shot out when they went to rescue Leia. So it's so fun to see those little throwbacks and stuff like that. I love it. The next throwback is I wanted to see. I love seeing. We have Rex and Kanan together again in the ship as they're flying in to try and save these guys, and they're in their stormtrooper armor. That was like the best thing ever. I love those guys together. There's some really fun interchanges that they have. Did you notice that Kanan, and help me remember this, is this the first time that Kanan has called Rex Gramps?
No, I think
that's what I say because I think they're like the same age. Which is because the clones age faster, and I was like,
that's true.
They are this. I think they are the same age. Good catch.
That's funny.
Now,
I think he had called him Grandpas before, especially when their relationship was a little bit more contentious when they had done that first mission together as stormtroopers.
Right.
I'm not positive, but it didn't seem new to me.
Yeah, that was the turning point in their relationship, was that first time that they got to sort of really fight together. Now, for me, the significance of the term Gramps, that he used that, is something that is some really fun, wild fan speculation, okay?
I think I know where you're going with this.
You know where I'm going? Nick
I
Sant?
so.
Okay, you want to cover it? Go ahead, Austin. So Nick Sant, who's Nick Sant?
Well, isn't he a rebel commando?
Yes.
Who fights in the Battle of Endor? And when you see a screenshot or you watch the movie and you pause it at certain points, there's a rebel commando who's got a white or at least a really light blonde beard, and he looks just like Captain Rex.
Right.
Like dressed in Endor commando gear, and he's even the rebel who dresses up and puts on the scout trooper outfit to stay outside and stay watch. And then you see him later. He's captured. He's got his helmet off, but you can see the beard, and he's in the
Yeah,
scout troop.
he's got his hands up like this, and you see the
Yeah.
beard, and he's wearing, and he's like he was undercover. So I don't know if it's a full-on theory or not. Irina, what do you think about this one? Have you heard this one before?
No, I haven't. It's a first.
You gotta
So
go watch Return of the Jedi.
yeah, there's one character in there that is this old guy, and I think that Dave Filoni has said, yeah, that's fun. I think it'd be fun to do that. But Nick Sant, which is sort of a mix-up of Saint Nick, is this old bearded guy, and they're joking that could potentially be Rex. I don't think that it's all official or anything like that, but we'll call him Rex. But Nick Sant's other nickname in that canon is Gramps. And so when Kanan called him Gramps, I was like, oh, that's it. That's a perfect throwback. Dave Filoni has heard the fans and went, yeah, okay, we got him. We'll get that in for you guys.
That's my own headcanon. I've accepted it. It's totally him.
It's real.
If
real.
If he doesn't die before then, it's gotta be him.
That's what we do at our house. Whenever we have certain confusing things, we always go back to Guardians of the Galaxy, and he says that's a fake laugh, and we always go, it's real. It's real. Now, something else I wanted to talk about is sort of in this scene where we have Rex and Kanan together. Rex is there. We don't know how Rex's story is going to end, which is really fun, because that he's even back into the story. But the other thing that's happening is that Kanan has had his own sort of Jedi story. And to a certain degree, because he has overcome this hardship, I don't even think of him as being blind anymore. And there was a scene there where they first pulled up to this battle, and Rex goes, whoa. And Kanan says, well, what are you seeing? And he goes, nothing. He's like, ships, just lots of ships. So, Irina, I want to ask you a little bit about Kanan's journey. And is it, where do you think that his journey is going to sort of like finish? And do you think that it was maybe too easy that he's like overcome his blindness? Are they reminding us about his blindness? Or what do you think about Kanan's journey so far?
Regarding his blindness, I did think they brushed over it really quickly. I mean, he did have these insecurities about being a Jedi, and from the Kanan comic, if you read that, you see his struggles and how hard it was for him to get around being a Jedi, because he really, at one point, he didn't accept the idea anymore. So he had to get used to that all over again.
Right.
And all his insecurities came back when he had to train Ezra. When the events on Malachor happened with Ahsoka gone and with him going blind by the hand of Maul. So I really think he is a man full of insecurities, and to have gone over them so quickly is something that I don't think is possible, and I really wish they kept on it a bit more. And right now, I think, I don't know, it's really weird that he's able to function like any normal person would.
Right.
Like, it's not even relevant that he's blind anymore, which I find a bit, weird.
And I thought that was probably almost what they were doing in this episode, is that they were making this callback to sort of like remind us, that, oh yes, he does have the Force and he's really connected to it and he's been able to overcome quite a few things, but he's still blind, and he still can't see. So I think that was just a subtle sort of a reminder there. And the other thing that was sort of like another big story point that I think that maybe we've skipped over is Ezra started to touch onto the dark side, and I think that we've sort of like skipped over that. And Ezra's all better now, he doesn't have these conflicts anymore. Either of you guys want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I agree. I think there was a lot of things they had set up at the beginning of season 3 that we were all very excited for, and then they resolved them in 1 or 2 episodes.
Right.
Because they wanted to move on to other storylines that they've had since and are developing now are are exciting too. And I think it does feel a bit rushed. I think they're kind of racing much faster toward the end of this series than Clone Wars ever did. Um, but at the same time, I think you kind of have to have some sort of suspension of disbelief and understand there's a lot of stuff that goes on between episodes or off camera that we don't see, and kind of have to deal with it. Because another way to look at it is that for Kanan, I think he's a completely different Jedi, a completely different man than he was before he was blinded. And I think it has taken his Jedi discipline and his connection to the Force to a completely new level. And that's been really interesting to see. And so I think you can look at it a way that he's been able to accomplish it or overcome it so quickly because he's connected with Bendu. He's let go of a lot of things and overcome that.
No, that's great. I like that. How about you, Irina? You have any thoughts on maybe Ezra's sort of like path? And Austin, you touched a little bit on sort of like where we're seeing things resolve and where, man, this episode, I really felt like we're ramping up for the end of the season, Sabine's episode was super fun, and I enjoyed that. But this one, it just felt like it was jam-packed with stuff ready to go. Do you have any thoughts about Ezra and his path and maybe what we're leading up to with the end of this season?
Just as Austin said, I think the dark side, Ezra's dark side things, we got past that really quickly as well. So I really love, actually, I don't even know at this point, because if they go back to it will feel a bit awkward, but at the same time, if they leave hanging, that's going to be awkward as well. So I don't even know what path they could take right now. Whatever works, I guess. In terms of where this is going, I really hope we're gonna get back to Sabine because I really like her. And at the end of last week's episode, with the prospect of her not returning to the Ghost Crew, I was really sad because I was like, I want to see this woman more.
Right.
I really think her path with the Mandalorians is gonna have a payoff with the rebellion. We're probably gonna see Thrawn invading the rebel base, and maybe Sabine providing help with the Mandalorians, I think.
Right.
Probably.
Well, and I was joking a little bit online, and I didn't get any traction. I thought it was funny. Sabine's going to put together her own group of fighters, and they are going to be the Knights of Ren. Huh?
The other Knights of Ren. WREN.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Sabine is going to come back at the end of this season because we've got a droids episode, and then we have Tatooine, coming up with Maul and Obi-Wan, and like I really do believe that Sabine's story is not over, and there's a lot more to tell then. I just don't know that she's going to come back anymore this season. But we also have like an Ahsoka book, that we've gotten. And so there may be other stories that get told outside of the animated series. But I don't want a book. I want to see her and her family in action because that's going to be the best part of it. So... Yeah. Austin, did you have something else? I was going to go into the next section.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of, Thrawn invading the Rebels base, just seeing this build up as he's narrowing it down from the past episodes as well as this one, and seeing him bring it up in that meeting with Kallus and with List and with Constantine, and they're trying to decide which one of these guys is the spy. I think he brings up that list. He's like, I've narrowed it down to these many just to get them to try to get Fulcrum to warn the rebels. So you see everything that, like every little thing Thrawn is doing has a long game.
Yeah, it's all part of the plan, right?
Yeah.
Now, I wondered a little bit if Thrawn was sort of like using the his shutdown code. He was saying, Rook. I wondered if he was saying that almost within earshot to see if they would pick up on it, but I don't think that was quite planned.
He seemed pretty surprised when it didn't work later in the episode.
Right. Oh, right.
I
Yeah.
looked at his face. He was like, he said it, and then it didn't work, and he was like, "Oh no!" And now I gotta just fight these guys. So.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Thrawn's plan. So he's been able to narrow down all of the different planets, right? And he knows basically where they are. And Chop comes in and he changes he erases Alatol or Chopper Base and then adds another planet in there. But at the same time, I'm thinking, doesn't he have a backup? I mean, is he going to notice it? I mean, even Dooku tried to erase planets from, the library, and that didn't work. So, Irina, do you think that the plan is going to be successful to just simply delete the planet from the map, or do you think that that's sort of like that's a fool's errand?
I think it's pretty much a fool's errand. You have to be reminded of the fact that Thrawn has been established as a very visual person. He studies art, and he gets most of his input from visual stuff.
Right.
So having studied that map so long and having worked so hard on narrowing down the locations, I don't think one planet can escape his gaze.
I thought that too. When there's that scene in the episode when he walks in after they had deleted it. He walks in, he brings it up, and he looks at it, and you can see him thinking as he's looking at it. And I'm like, oh, there's no way he knows exactly what's going on.
But then he's like, oh, all's in order, everything's fine, right? I'm like, no, it's not. He knows. Totally knows.
Thrawn knows everything.
Someone was listening, or since he was talking to a stormtrooper, he probably didn't consider this guy had to know, so he brushed it off.
Right.
Maybe.
I don't know. Now, here's something else about sort of like this plan that I think is fun to think about. Have you ever thought that if you it's just a slight tangent. If you were to remove Indiana Jones from Raiders of the Lost Ark, the movie would have ended almost exactly the same. Right? He got involved and he did this thing and did that thing, but in the end it was all sort of like it ended the same. Like the Nazis opened up the Ark and they all got killed. Indiana Jones didn't even need to be there. So let's make a comparison here with poor Ezra and poor Ezra's plan. So Ezra comes up with this grand plan. They're going to jump in and save him. And it seemed like it wasn't even like a fully hatched plan. He just went in and he's got, Rex and Kanan are his backup, flying as his wingman. And he just jumps into the middle of this thing. Ezra's plan, was it no, I don't know if I have even anything more to say about that.
It did seem a little ridiculous when Ezra first came in and he was talking all tough like a bounty hunter. I mean, it almost was like, was this just Ezra's plan from the get-go? And, it's like, oh, we got to get him out. I think it's hard to imagine Hera
signing off on that one.
Actually, yeah. No, I think it was a poorly executed and thought out plan. Not only that, but it made things worse, if that's even possible.
Right.
So I don't even know why they did it in the first place. Or I guess they weren't counting on Thrawn's involvement. They were just counting on being onto that light cruiser, and the highest ranking person there was Kallus, and they would just pick him up and whisk him away.
Yeah. I think that you're right. That Austin, you're right. They didn't plan for all of that other extra stuff that was going on, and as a result, it caused new problems. But I mean, now we've got an even bigger problem for Kallus. Ezra has expressed that he doesn't completely trust Kallus. He doesn't know that he's really 100% on board with the rebel cause. I think it was wonderful that we started this, with his point of view, because the last time we saw Kallus in his room is when he was feeling so alone after that experience with Zeb, that like ended up making him change his mind and actually starting to help the rebels. But everything is worse now for Kallus. Number one, Thrawn knows. Thrawn knows that he is Fulcrum. And in the end, he called him what? Agent Fulcrum? He says Agent Fulcrum is going to be a better asset than Kallus ever was. Do you guys think, Irina, do you think that we're going to get in a situation where Kallus is feeding false information to the rebels and the rebels don't trust him, and now potentially the rebels are going to kill Kallus because they think that he's betraying them?
Feeding false. Yeah, I think that's certain. I mean, Thrawn is gonna play them both, and he's gonna do it well. I don't think the rebellion is gonna kill Kallus, though. It could get to that, but I don't think so. If anything, they do have more of a moral compass, so I think they would
Right.
look for actual proof before doing it if they were to actually do it. Said I hope everything goes well for Kallus, though. I do think, because he does care. By the end of this episode, he even stays there, and I have to wonder, does he think he's only valuable to the rebellion just as Fulcrum, or as Kallus too? Because that is the question.
And that's a great question. I love that question. Austin, what do you think? Is Kallus and I'm sorry, Irina, did I cut you off? Do you have another thought there? So
I mean, if there's anything I'm going to tell you.
So, Austin, what do you think about that? Is Kallus having sort of like a moral dilemma or an identity crisis where he doesn't know whether he's more valuable as Kallus or the double agent or as Fulcrum, and will he lose sort of like himself if he just becomes, Kallus the traitor instead of Fulcrum the double agent? And I've got to think that his days are numbered. List is going to tell everything that he knows, and it's going to be proven that he's not, he's not really Fulcrum. So what do you think about Kallus's current situation?
Yeah, I mean, I've been afraid for Kallus for a while. I mean, it's been so interesting seeing his path from the episode with Zeb on the moon of Geonosis, where I first started to gain more respect and empathy for him, and then finding out he was Fulcrum, having a deeper respect and kind of a admiration for the bravery that would take to not defect from the Empire, but to stay within it and risk it all. And then that last episode, not last episode, but a few episodes ago last year, when Thrawn reveals to Kallus, we've got a spy, and it's that episode where they go undercover into the factory,
right?
And
right.
And Thrawn says, we've got someone, Fulcrum is somebody here in the Empire, and right then, like, oh, Kallus is in big trouble,
right?
And so I've been afraid for him since that episode, and then this episode, there was just so much tension the entire time, being like, oh, they're going to catch Kallus, he's in big trouble, and I've grown to really like the character because of the guts and the cunning it would take to do what he's doing. And
does that have something to do with the mutton chops? Is it a facial hair thing that you really like in him, or?
I do admire his facial hair. I used to joke that he would shave with his helmet on, because his helmet covers right here, and he just shaves. But it's this whole episode, especially the intrigue that the game Thrawn was playing and the game Kallus was trying to play, combined with the music score.
Yes.
With Kevin Kinder's the music that he's given to Thrawn, with that organ and the deep choir music, it just made Thrawn's so threatening and the tension in this episode so incredible. My first time watching it, I was just shaking with anticipation of
Oh
what's going to
yeah.
happen to Kallus. And it's made him such a sympathetic character, and his
Yeah.
decision to stay in the Empire. I think he's also got to know deep down it's not gonna end well for him. He's
And it's
ready to
not going to
sacrifice
last.
himself.
Yeah, it's not going to
Yeah,
last. Now,
yeah.
and that's something else is that I think that by starting this episode with from like his point of view, it added that element of tension to the whole episode too, because you felt really jarring, like you were right in the middle of it all, and so that was super great. I love that you brought up the music. That that I don't know what the actual phrase is, but there is a phrase that is means like every character has their own musical sort of like beat or tones.
Is it leitmotif? Is that the phrase?
I,
I
I
think that's
think
the
it
musical
I
phrase.
think it may be.
Yeah.
So somebody else pointed out that the last person we have yet to talk about here in this episode is Yularen. That Yularen had his own music as well. Irina, you want to talk about Yularen a little bit? You got all excited there.
Yeah, I'm way more fond of him than I ever thought I was.
Yes, how
Why?
come?
It's so amazing to think that he was there with Anakin in the very beginning, you know, through the Clone Wars, and then he is there with Darth Vader, basically with the same person years later, and he's not even realizing it. It's just so fascinating to me. And for that reason, I don't know, I just got attached to him a bit more than I thought possible.
Right.
You
And
know,
it
he
was
had.
like, yes, thank you.
You know, Iriana, if you remember from the Clone Wars, Yularen had a connection with Trench as well. So
Yeah.
maybe there's a whole thing going on with Thrawn and
Hey,
Yularen and Trench and their history.
nice. And I mean, Yularen wouldn't be Yularen without special guest star Tom Kane coming back in to voice the character. He voiced him in the Clone Wars. He was also the introduction voice when we had the Clone Wars starting. He says, "Last time on the Clone Wars," and he would kick things off. And of course, he was the voice of Yoda. So. Thank you, Tom Kane, for coming back and being Yularen again. I mean, he's just so smooth. I mean, he does a wonderful, wonderful job. Now that kind of covers most of the main points of the episode, and as we're sort of like wrapping up, I wanted to ask you guys if you had any sort of like key points, thoughts that you kind of went, oh, this is what I remember most about the episode, or hey, Spencer, we forgot this part. Do you guys want to kick us off and say closing thoughts? Austin, do you have anything that you wanted to share with us that maybe we forgot about?
Well, I've got two things. One's very minor and probably not important, and one that's more important. But the first thing is there was one artifact in Thrawn's office that was like a semicircle with an arrow through it, and there was a green gem in the middle,
Right. Was it
and it
kryptonite?
looks could have been, but it looked so familiar. It looked like a logo I had seen before, and I was looking around, and it doesn't. It's not exactly the same, but it's a little bit similar to the Skywalker Sound logo.
Oh, interesting.
Um, there might be another one that's more similar to, but
Right.
it definitely rung a bell in my head when I saw it. So there's other little Easter eggs in there like
Yeah.
that.
And
But the more,
I think that the Holy Grail from Indiana Jones was also in there too, right?
yeah,
We
they
missed
they
that one.
they showed that.
What was the other one you were thinking about?
But yeah, the more in depth thing is that I think that Thrawn has known it's been Kallus this entire time, even
Hmm.
even way back to the episode The Inside Man that we had referenced earlier, when Thrawn first tells Kallus, like he tells him to his face, yeah, we've got a spy in our
Right.
midst. And
Right.
I think at that moment Thrawn knows it's Kallus.
Right.
He just wants to, I mean, not only get more evidence on him, but he wants to use him. He wants to
Yeah.
figure out, I'm not just going to arrest him and have him executed for treason. I'm going to use his treason against him to benefit the Empire and destroy the rebels. So that's why I think maybe Callus's days aren't quite as numbered as we might think, because Thrawn wants to keep him around.
Huh.
Thrawn wants to keep him around as long as he can, as long as he can use him.
And so
And
potentially he might like sort of like blackmail him, you know, he might get something other information on him to force him to continue to be sort of like this agent Fulcrum.
maybe not reveal to Kallus that he knows he's Fulcrum, but play behind the scenes. Um, like we had mentioned, maybe feed misinformation so that
Right.
Kallus thinks he's still doing his job as Fulcrum, but Thrawn's running the show.
Awesome. No, I love that. I love that. And Irina, did you have some thoughts? You know what? I've also got a comment as I'm looking at the video. It seems like the sun has risen. You know, your lighting is looking very lovely. Thank you for waking up so early to chat with us today. Did you have some other thoughts or some things that maybe we missed about this episode you wanted to point out in closing?
I do have a few. I love the fact I love the Ezra Kallus interactions because it feels like it's just another day in the Ghost Crew. They're so
Exactly.
natural. And I go back to the rebellion, even though they don't trust Kallus, they are so eager to send help to him, and again the fact that they can talk so freely, it's just mind-blowing. Also Kallus with List, I think it's the only friendship we've seen within the Empire. Correct me if I'm wrong, but have we seen any other Imperials, having a sort of relationship? Because Kallus
Hmm.
clearly seems to appreciate List. He recommends him in front of Governor Price. He encourages him a few times. Like, you can see that they do get along somehow.
Right.
And him betraying List at the very end, I thought was a great sacrifice for him.
It's
So,
tragic.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that I wonder if, was it a sincere and a true sort of like relationship that they had, or was Callus just using him to be able to have someone to offer up to Thrawn as, who Fulcrum was to protect himself. So there's a chance that it wasn't real. What do you think, Austin?
I've got a thought on that because I thought about that. I said how long was Kallus planning to set up List, and I think it's from the moment he realizes that Yularen is there and that they're going to be interviewing, they're going to be looking for somebody who's Fulcrum. But there's a moment before that happens, before they even get to the Chimera Star Destroyer, that List is talking about. I hope this meeting goes better than my last meeting with the superiors when I messed up with Princess Leia, and I hope to make a better impression. And Kallus says very sincerely, I'm sure you will. Like, he kind of
Right.
looks at him like I can mentor this young lieutenant, and
Right.
he still has sympathy for other Imperials. But then by the time he's there, I think when he talks to Governor Price and says,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, actually, Lieutenant List did all that. He was putting the attention on him. I think that was part of his plan
Right.
to
Right.
draw attention to List."
Well, and something else I just thought of is because I had mentioned, that you're a faithful and true Hufflepuff. How difficult it is to be that double agent, and you think about Snape and what he had done to sort of like be true to both sides, and his whole role. I mean, Callus can't have any friends at all, because that's something that's going to be used as leverage against him, or something that he's going to end up having to sacrifice in the end. And I think that maybe he may have been friendly and he liked List, but in the end, because of his role as an agent, he couldn't really have any friends.
Yeah, that comes first. I mean,
Yeah.
his name is Kallus.
I
Even
know,
though he's
right?
working for the rebels, he's still Kallus.
That's a little on the nose there, but it's perfect. He's completely calloused. Irina, did you have any other thoughts in closing?
um, one last thought. I think Kallus is probably the most complete and complex character on this show, ironically, because it doesn't focus on him.
Right.
but he has a clear arc. He goes through an evolution from point A to point B, and I love that. And now, at this point in time, you can clearly see that he has a rebel heart, but he's so imperial. Like he's so cold and ruthlessly efficient, even though he's so passionate about protecting this cause.
Right.
And I thought it was really tragic for him too, because he's no stranger to violence and to spying on people and betraying them, as we've seen, and it's sad the amount of sacrifices he's going to have to do, and who
Right.
knows what's going to happen to him.
And the unfortunate thing about having a character on the show like this, that we've been able to see a clear and complete arc, is that a clear and complete arc may mean that it's ending, so we don't know what's happening for Kallus in the end. Austin, you wanted to jump in on that one too?
I was going to say, I don't think Kallus would ever be comfortable completely going with the rebels.
Right.
Like if he had gone with Ezra and he had gone back to their base and become a rebel soldier, a rebel commander, he wouldn't feel like he fit in, because he still is a Imperial, even though he's working against the Empire. And I think that's why one reason why he stayed is because he thinks much more of an Imperial way than a rebel way.
Right. Well, excellent. You guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy evenings and mornings to be with me here today and talk about this episode. It was super fun episode, and it makes it even better to be able to talk with you guys about it. I think that some little things in the show that I wanted to point out, sort of in ending, is when Ezra is captured and they take him onto the Chimera, and he's walking down the steps there, one of the troopers like bats him in the back of the head, knocks him as he's walking down. I loved that, and I loved that when Rex went up to fight Governor Price, he's like, "All right, come on, lady, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hit a girl, but I'm gonna if I have to." I love the characters, and the characters make the story, and the story, is what makes it Star Wars. So thank you guys very much for being here. Oh, you got something else?
Since you pointed out Rex, did you notice he said, wait, what in the blazes are they doing there? That's a direct to Obi-Wan, and I loved it because
Nice.
Obi-Wan is like, I think is, yeah. In AOTC especially, he talks about, Obi-Wan is on Geonosis and Anakin is on Tatooine when he was supposed to be on. Obi-Wan tries to contact him and he doesn't find him, and he realizes he's on Tatooine, and he's like, "What in the blazes is he doing?"
Good catch.
Wonderful catch. So, Irina, if people would like to check out your podcast or follow with what you've got going on, where can people get a hold of you at?
So far, I'm only on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/MalakorTransmissionsPod. I do try to put up links on the Star Wars Alliance group, so they're going to be able to catch me there, if
Excellent.
not in any way else. And yeah, that's kind of it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And Austin, if people want to follow you, you want to give them your Twitter handle, your Twitter handle there.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Austin W. Thompson. I'm also on Facebook, part of a number of Star Wars fan groups. So if you see me around there, we can chat and talk about Star Wars.
Excellent. And again, thank you guys for being here on the show. We are flying by the seat of our pants, having a great time. I'm Spencer Brinkerhoff III, and this is Studios B3, and we are live talking Star Wars. Thank you all. We're going to have a great time, and we're looking forward to some more Star Wars. See you guys later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us. Bye.